What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are basically going to continue our coverage over the Reign of X era of X-Men comics, where we actually do pick up with X-Men number 20. Now, this is actually going to be very important. And the reason why, because when it comes to the Reign of X and X-Men number 20, it is basically setting up everything Jonathan Hickman is going to do in his Inferno event. And also, it's a cool book for Mystique. Like Mystique, my gosh, this character, you can tell Jonathan Hickman really cared for this character because he spent a lot of times working on this character throughout his run with the X-Men title. Like, he really does care a lot for Mystique. But let's go ahead and dive into X-Men number 20. Now, X-Men number 20 actually picks up in the past, and which, of course, is Mystique right now looking at the Mask of Destiny. Now, you have to remember, when it comes to Mystique and Destiny, it's been kind of told to us that they were basically lovers. Now, in the early days of Chris Claremont's run, it was very obvious that these two characters were lovers. But of course, Marvel back then did not want to actually show the world a lesbian couple. Now, later on in Marvel's time, they did some retcon to say like, hey, you know, Mystique and Destiny, yeah, they were totally a couple. And so by this point in Marvel Comics, they are a couple. Now, technically, Destiny is still dead, and Mystique has been doing different odd jobs for Charles Xavier and Magneto because she believes if she does all these different odd jobs that they will actually bring her back to life like she wants them to do, because Destiny is one of the few mutants that has not been brought back to life, which of course the X-Men are very capable of actually doing. Now, that is the moment you actually do have Mystique meet up with Forge. Now, when it comes to Forge, you have to remember that basically his mutant ability gives him the ability to actually understand technology even better. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to Forge, he's able to create a lot of different things. And the things he does create is because of his mutant ability. Now, with that being said, basically Forge is kind of like the gunsmith on the island of Krakoa. Now, this is Mystique coming to Forge for a weapon, and the reason why, because she's actually about to go on another mission to hopefully bring down Orchid. Now remember, Orchid is a new organization in Marvel Comics, and with this new organization, it's basically trying to erase the mutant race. Now, with that being said, Orchid is actually made up of a bunch of different people who come from different kinds of organizations, so like SHIELD, AIM, the Hand, and so on and so on. They all come together to basically make Orchid because they want to get rid of the mutant race. Now, while Mystique is actually talking to Forge, you have Forge tell Mystique that he'll be able to create a very powerful weapon. The problem is, though, this is Forge kind of telling us that the weapon that he is going to be making will be very powerful, just like a weapon he made a long time ago. And what I mean is that Forge made a weapon that could technically make a mutant become human. It was a very huge focal point in the X-Men history because that weapon did fall in the wrong hands. But this is Forge telling Mystique, I'll be able to create you a weapon, but that weapon will be just as powerful as the weapon I made in the past that made mutants into regular human beings. Now, we actually do pick up in the present day, and of course we actually do pick up with Charles Xavier and Magneto meeting up with Mystique. Now, this meeting is actually very important, and the reason why, because this meeting is all about Mystique about to go on her next mission. But we also find out about the weapon that Forge has made to basically help her on her next mission. And apparently he made a weapon that is able to create a small black hole. Now, of course, course, the reason why they're going to use this weapon is to not really defeat Orchid, but to actually get rid of them, to hopefully prevent the idea of Nimrod coming online. And what I mean is that Nimrod is a character that we have seen since the 1990s. But basically, Nimrod is kind of like the perfect version of a sentinel. And matter of fact, Nimrod is able to adapt to almost any kind of mutant abilities. And so Nimrod is the perfect machine to help erase the mutant race. And so right now it's Charles Xavier and Magneto trying to stop Orchid from basically turning Nimrod online. Because if Nimrod does come online, that of course means the end of the mutant race. And so Mystique is going to sneak onto Orchid to hopefully stop Nimrod from coming online. Now, Mystique does tell Charles Xavier and Magneto that if she does complete this mission, her wife, Destiny, needs to be pushed in front of the line to be brought back to life. Because there is a long line of mutants who are waiting to be brought back to life. But this Mystique saying, if I complete this mission and I am successful, you better bring my wife back to life. She better be the first one in line. And of course, Charles Xavier and Magneto have no choice but to actually agree to that deal. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with the Forge. Now, remember, the Forge is basically the main building or the main facility for Orchid, where of course they were there making Nimrod in the Forge. And matter of fact, they're getting ready to turn Nimrod online. Now, we actually do pick up with Aaliyah Gregor. Now, remember, Aaliyah Gregor was one of the lead scientists we met in the earlier parts of Jonathan Hickman's run on X-Men. But of course, she was the one who was working very hard to make Nimrod. At this point right now, Nimrod is done. But before she turns Nimrod online, she does remind us that her husband, Aramis Mendel, died at the very beginning of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men run. Matter of fact, I want to say he died back in House of X and Power of X. Now, with that being said though, this is her telling us that basically her husband was part of an experiment. And this experiment was a way to kind of store the mind of her husband inside a crystal. Now, it wasn't kind of like she took the mind out of his body and put that mind inside a crystal. Instead, she was able to kind of copy everything about her husband and kind of have a backup system set for her husband placed inside a crystal. And with this crystal, she puts it inside Nimrod. And with her doing that right there, basically Nimrod is just her husband, but being downloaded into a brand new body. It's very similar to what the X-Men have built on COPPA, where of course you have the Five create you a new body, but then you have Charles Xavier download your memories into that new body. And so what Aaliyah Gregor did was she made a copy of her husband's mind. And so once she was done to making Nimrod, she just downloaded his mind with the crystal into this new Nimrod body. Bam, you now have Nimrod. He's online and he's basically walking around and getting ready to do anything he wants to do. Now, when Nimrod first comes online, he looks at his wife because this is Aramis Mendel just in the Nimrod body. And he's kind of like, I died and you put me in this new body. I'm very grateful, but kind of like, I hate the idea of this body because now I cannot give you children like you want. But either way, for Aaliyah Gregor, she does not mind because now she has her husband back, even though her husband is right now in the body of a robot. But while you have the two characters talking to one another, that is the moment you have Nimrod say, hey, by the way, that security guard right there, yeah, that's a mutant. And of course, he's talking about Mystique, because you have to remember, when it comes to Mystique, Mystique has the ability to shapeshift. And that right there is actually very important, because she changed her appearance to look like she's somebody who actually works for Orchid. Now, with that being said, she was detected by Nimrod. And so what you have Mystique do is throw down the weapon that was given to her by Forge, because remember, Forge gave her a weapon that is able to create a small black hole. And so she throws the weapon down, and then she tries to escape from the space station to get back to COPPA. Now, this is why I say Nimrod is basically the perfect sentinel, because he was able to clone himself, to duplicate himself. And so you have the original Nimrod stay behind to deal with the black hole, while you have the other Nimrod hunt down Mystique. Now, you have to remember, this Nimrod right here has the mind of the husband of Alea Gregor. And so what he tells his wife is this right here. He said he'll be able to actually deal with the black hole. The problem is, though, because this is the original version of the Nimrod, the clone Nimrod left to go chase after Mystique. So this is the original one. When he tries to deal with the black hole, he will basically be destroyed. Now, this Nimrod will be able to regrow all its lost limbs, but the problem is, though, the crystal that was used to give the mind of Alea Gregor's husband inside the body of Nimrod will be lost inside the black hole. And so while Nimrod is able to come back together and completely heal after being destroyed by a black hole, it will just be a robot. It will no longer be her husband. And so it's her literally losing her husband all over again. But at the same time, he has no choice but to sacrifice himself to save his wife and this space station. And so you have one Nimrod deal with the black hole, while the other Nimrod grabs Mystique, kills her, and throws her back through the portal that leads to COPPA right in front of Magneto and Charles Xavier. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with the Omega Sentinel and Dr. Devo. Now, remember, the Omega Sentinel is basically a human that has Sentinel body parts that was combined to her. And that's really it. But also, Dr. Devo is the one who's technically in charge of Orchid. Now, with that being said, you do have Dr. Devo ask Omega Sentinel, how is, of course, Alea Gregor doing? And of course, you do have the Omega Sentinel tell him, listen, dude, she ain't doing that great. She just lost her husband all over again. Like, how do you actually think she's doing right now? Of course, she's not doing good. But then that's the moment you have Omega say, well, on the bright side, we technically did not lose everything. Their weapon, which of course was Forge's small black hole weapon, did not destroy their space station. On top of that, they do have their Nimrod now. And so now they can begin the process of possibly getting rid of the mutant race. And you have Dr. Devo say, look at them. Look at the mutant race. They don't hate us. They actually fear us, because they went out of their way to hopefully get rid of us because they fear us. And that shows that we'll be the ones that is actually going to win the war. Now, back on COPPA, of course, Mystique was brought back to life because, of course, the X-Men do have a way to bring people back to life. Now, with that being said, you do have Charles Xavier and Magneto ask Mystique what happened. And you have Mystique tell them, I failed. Nimrod is online. And that right there tells Charles Xavier and Magneto things are about to get a whole lot worse for the X-Men. On top of that right there, you didn't have Mystique ask Charles Xavier and Magneto, what about my wife? And you have Charles Xavier and Magneto say, what about your wife? You failed the mission. Nimrod came online. And so, of course, we are not going to bring your dead wife back to life. Now, that is the moment where we actually do have Charles Xavier and Magneto go to a secret place that's on COPPA, where, of course, only those two characters know about this hidden place. And when they go to this hidden place, of course, that is the moment we come to find out that Mohamed Taggart is hiding out inside this hidden place. And remember, Mohamed Taggart is now technically a mutant. She has the ability to relive her life over and over again. But of course, she was caught in one of her lies by Destiny, and Destiny warned her that she only has 10 lives, and with those 10 lives, she better be using her ability to save the mutant race. But Destiny also told Mystique, if the X-Men will not bring me back to life, even after you try and try again, burn the whole place down. Bring COPPA down. And the book ends on that note right there. And so with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.